L'architecture, c'est, avec des matières brutes, établir des rapports émouvants.
How did the term brutalist come to be? Presumably stated in 1950, the term neo-brutalists was coined by the Swedish architect Hans Asplund as a jocose comment directed at his colleagues Bent Edman and Lennart Holm in response to the house they were designing for the Pharmacia head Ellis Goth, with its materials being used in a very visible and straightforward way, such as the brown brick facade, the visible I-beams over the partial rows of windows, flat roof, and the visible impressions of the tongue and groove boards used to form the ceiling. This was before there was even an architectural movement for it to describe. The story goes that at a friendly get-together, Hans Asplund once again jokingly brought up the term to a group of English friends, and later found out that it had spread like wildfire by a certain faction of English architects. Unknown to Asplund, the actual phrase that spread like wildfire was the New Brutalism, which at that time became a stylistic label referring exclusively to mean modern architecture, as that by Mies van der Rohe, being the London protagonist architects Alison and Peter Smithson, with their Mycenaean school at Hunstanton, generally taken to be the first brutalist building in England, of which was a winning entry in 1949, with construction being completed in 1954. Having been published and already circulating, they had acquired some depth of meaning, over and above the widely recognized connection with béton brut. The floors and roof slabs are built up of precast concrete slabs, left as exposed concrete on the underside. Walls that are brick on the outside are brick on the inside. Wherever one stands within the school, one sees its actual structural materials exposed, without plaster and frequently without paint. This indeed is an attempt to make architecture out of the relationships of brute materials, but it is done with the greatest self-denying restraint. While brutalism had not yet turned from an aesthetic to an ethic, the term brutalist was on its way to becoming what we know it today. What is béton brut? Béton brut can literally be translated into raw concrete from French, and was first coined as a term by Le Corbusier around 1952 as a way to describe his residential housing Unité d'Habitation at Marseille, having started construction in 1947, prior to the building by Alison and Peter Smithson. Le Corbusier conjured concrete almost as a new material, exploiting its crudities to produce an architectural surface of a rugged grandeur that seems to echo that of well-weathered Doric columns of temples in Magna Graecia. It was not a question of architecture is that which makes magnificent ruins. It started as a magnificent ruin even before the building was completed, and humorously expressed as the first modern building that has room for cockroaches. What is art brut? Predating its use by Le Corbusier and Hans Asplund, the word brut was used by the French artist Jean Dubuffet as early as 1945 to describe graffiti and the work of the mentally ill, prisoners, children, and primitive artists that defied conventional art, or as Jean called it, cultural art. Art brut, or the 1972 English term outsider art, coined by Roger Cardinal, did not adhere to the restrictive cliches of classical art or art that is fashionable, but was completely raw, pure, reinvented in all its phases by its author, based solely on his own impulses. What is art concret? Even predating the use of the phrase art brut by Dubuffet in 1945, art concret, or concrete art, was established by the Dutch artist Theo van Doesburg in 1930, releasing his Concrete Art Manifesto, which stated that art must exclude lyricism, drama, and symbolism, and must be built up with purely plastic elements, namely surfaces and colors. A painting does not have any meaning other than itself. It must be simple and visually controllable, turning to such things as mathematical and algebraic formulas and scientific theories for inspiration. After Theo van Doesburg's death in 1931, industrial designer, architect, and painter Max Bill became the most famous proponent of art concret, spreading throughout the world and reaching its pinnacle in the late 1950s in Argentina and Brazil's neo-concretism movement, with Italian-born Brazilian Valdemar Cordeiro at the forefront, culminating in the construction of Brasilia designed by Oscar Niemeyer, Lucio Costa, and Joaquim Cardosa between 1956 and 1960.